I started RiffRaff when I was a senior at the University of Arkansas. I was studying interior design as my major, and I was set to graduate in 2009. So that's right in the middle of the recession. And I was seeing that the students that had graduated the year before me were being employed at architecture firms, which is exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to move to a big city and work in a hospitality firm. But what I had noticed through Facebook, keeping up with older classmen, was that architecture firms were laying off their interior designers because we were in a recession. That's what you do as companies. You've got to kind of trim the fat. And so I had this fear that I wasn't going to have a job come May of 2009. At the same time, my mom owned 3 daycares in the Fayetteville region. And when you're in a recession, what you do is you take your kid out of daycare because it's an expense you don't need necessarily. So the 3 daycares we had as a family, within a matter of months, dwindled down to the capacity of 1. And we were still paying rent and utilities on these locations. So as a family, we kind of had a crisis as well during this recession of, oh my gosh, we can't do this, we can't afford this, what are we going to do? Let's get together and let's brainstorm. So at the same time, I was an intern for a local interior designer in Fayetteville, and she was so kind to me. She's been such an inspiration. We're still friends today. She was allowing me to kind of sell my hobby in her storefront. And at the time, I was taking older pieces of furniture and refurbishing them, spray painting them, reupholstering them in my garage, bringing them to her shop, and she let me sell them. And because we were in a recession, driving that home, our customers were buying my pieces that were unique, one of a kind, and cheaper because they were yard sale finds. So they were kind of the only things selling at the time. So I had this issue of, oh my gosh, am I gonna have a job? And then I had this other issue of my parents kind of freaking out like, oh, what are we gonna do here? And then I had this thing that was going right. And so I kind of took this thing and ran with it. And the concept of RiffRaff was developed my senior year of college. And what I did was I went to my boss and said, hey, I've got this thing I've got to do. And I've got to go build a storefront. And she, my interior designer at the time, looked at me like, all right, good luck. So I couldn't get a loan. I didn't want to get a business loan. I didn't want to have that debt because that, to me, was terrifying, especially as a 21-year-old. What I did have was drive and hard work and a vision. So what I did was I quit my job with her blessing and took my paycheck, which was about $100, and I went to every single yard sale I could find that weekend and bought absolute crap. So I bought lamps that didn't have the wiring in them, I bought chairs that didn't have seats on them, and my whole goal was to get as much crap as possible and refurbish it. And so I did that. And then I posted pictures of this crap that I repainted on Facebook, and my friends bought it. And so, you know, it was cheaper priced items. College students could afford it. So this thing started happening where I was able to take this $100 I started with and create an inventory. And so I would sell one chair and with the profit buy 2 more. But sell one of those and keep one for an inventory that I was able to kind of turn over and build. And so I created the idea of RiffRaff in September of my senior year. In February, I opened RiffRaff in one of the locations that my mom had moved out of, but we were still paying rent. And so I was trying my best as an only child of our family to help the family pay for the rent. So I was trying to fix 2 areas of my life at once. It didn't really work at first. I graduated, and I was lucky if we had $30 in sales a day. I was my only employee. I was jumping back and forth between buying crap, painting the crap, and selling crap while being my own employee. And it wasn't easy, and there was a lot of struggles that come along with that. Any small business owner, any business owner can preach for days on how gut-wrenching it is to be a business owner. So I worked diligently. I was afraid to fail, and I think that's something you have to be stubborn. I'm very stubborn, and I was afraid to fail, so I just kept every day working hard at it. There was a month where I couldn't pay my own electricity bill, so I slept and ate and went home to a dark apartment every single night for 3 weeks because I was pouring every single cent I could find into RiffRaff and developing that idea because I did not want that to fail. The behind the scenes, that could be whatever it wanted to be, but that thing that I was creating that my passion was into couldn't fail. That wasn't an option for me. So after about 2 years of just kind of trotting along and wondering every day, do I need to give up or what really am I doing here? The space that the interior designer was in that I was working for opened up for lease on the Fayetteville Square. And so whenever I worked for her, I always pictured myself long-term after I went to this big city and was an interior designer, coming back home to Fayetteville and opening a shop. Well, I already had this shop, and it was all right. So I contacted the landlord of this space, and I said, hey, I've got this thing going. I need more foot traffic. I want to be close to the University of Arkansas, but I don't have any money. So would you let me be in this space, and I'll do my best to keep it up and keep it running and improve it on my own dime if you let me rent it for free for 6 months. And by the grace of God, he said, okay. And so I packed up the little space I had at my mom's old daycare in my little Xterra and drove across town and unpacked it and set up shop. And in this space was 2 clothing racks built into the wall. And I said to a friend, hey, who's kind of handy, I was like, hey, how much would it cost to take these racks out of the wall? And they were like, $900. And I was like, oh, I don't have $900. So instead, that night I went home and bought $400 of clothing instead. So our opening night in this new space on the square, I started selling clothing. And my friends showed up and they were like, what's going on here, Kirsten? And I was like, I couldn't afford to take the racks out, so I'm going to try clothing. So the very first night we were open, all the clothing sold. And I had made more that first night we were on the square than I did the entire month before in my old location. And so this idea of evolving started to come up in my life. And I found myself becoming a clothing store. And it worked. It's not something I'm passionate about, but who doesn't like new clothes? And I had a way of knowing how to market to girls, because I was one, and I was my age's demographic, which kind of takes me to my next point. RiffRaff has had 8 years of success, and yes, it's been 8 years. It's crazy. I feel like it should be longer or shorter some days. But I've had so many ups and downs with it. I have also had so many accolades with it. Inc. magazine named me one of the top 30 entrepreneurs in my age bracket. What? I was on the Forbes 30 under 30 list, and that's insane to me. That's the kind of thing that rappers rap about. And so, it's funny actually, I had gotten an email from Forbes, and I subscribed to their newsletter, and so when I got a Forbes email in, and it said, hey, 30 under 30, I actually deleted it at first, because I was like, I don't want to read about these people. And so then my customer service manager was like, hey, I kind of got this email, and I don't know if it's spam or not, but I think you're in the running for the 30 under 30 list. And I was like, And so I read it, and I just kind of responded like, oh, that's really great, thanks. They needed a headshot. So I went outside and took a picture of my iPhone and sent it. And so what's funny is a month and a half passed, and I'm sitting at home on my couch, and I'm scrolling through Instagram, and I noticed that one of my employees had tagged me in a post. And so I clicked on it, and it was Selena Gomez saying hey guys, I'm on Forbes 30 under 30. And I was like, oh, that's out. I'm going to go read it. I'm going to go see who's on it, because I knew it wasn't going to be me. And so I clicked on the link, and I go to e-commerce and retail, and I'm on the freaking list. So it says Kirsten Blowers, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I'm like, what? I found out by clicking on Selena Gomez's profile link. That's insane. But I still wake up every day kind of not realizing that RiffRaff's a real thing. Anyway, all this great success has been very surreal too. I think a resounding theme here today, is storytelling, and that's my RiffRaff story. With starting a business, when you create a business, and it's an extension of yourself. And I have had the pleasure of experiencing the power of your personal brand. And so I created RiffRaff, and the way I got it to where it was by putting myself out there. And so opening night, when I created RiffRaff, I messaged 80 of my friends on Facebook, and I said, hey, I'm doing this thing. It's going to sound weird, but I'm selling old furniture. So come on out and just show your face and eat some pretzels. And they did. And then they followed me on, I created RiffRaff as a person on Facebook, and they followed me there. And then Instagram came along, and I was like, I'm going to get on Instagram because I love social media, and I am a self-proclaimed social media junkie. So I was one of the first of my friends on Instagram, and I quickly figured out I got to get RiffRaff on Instagram. So RiffRaff was one of the very first boutiques on Instagram. And Pinterest followed, and Twitter, and Snapchat, and I love all forms of social media. What's been so great is I have seen the direct correlation of sales and my personal brand. And so it's been very, very interesting for me to say hey everyone, this weekend I'm at Austin City Limits, and if you're wondering what I'm wearing, you can get it at RiffRaff, and here's the name of the items. And within an hour, I see 3 or 4 of those items sold out. And that's insane to me, that people follow me and they're so intrigued by my life that they want to wear the same clothes I'm wearing. I will get messages that, hey, I'm coming to Fayetteville, and I've looked through your Instagram feed, and I'm going to all these places you frequent all the time. That's great, that's wonderful, I love that, but it's also kind of very strange too. So, when I first heard of your personal brand 12, 13 years ago, I immediately was like, ew, gross. It's such a thing to put yourself, it was a brown nosing, it was a way to kind of brown nose about yourself. You're like, how can I portray myself to the public the way I want to be portrayed? But it's funny how RiffRaff has evolved. I've noticed I was personally branding myself before I knew I was personally branding myself. And so I started RiffRaff fearlessly, and I put myself out on the line. And what's been interesting is to see how I have evolved over my 20s. So I started when I was 21, and because I use personal branding, my life has been very public. And I've done it myself. Like, I put myself out there. So, you know, I started this business, and I would post about all the late nights I was doing, and people connected to that. And so I would post about these fun trips I was taking with my friends, and people connected with that. And then when I turned 25, we had this huge year of growth, and people noticed. And then when I turned 27, I had this really, really gorgeous dream wedding. And it was what every girl thought of when they were 7, all the way up to their age 25. You know, this is their dream wedding. This is exactly what I wanted. Well, people followed along. They loved it. I had a hashtag. All my friends were in it. I had like a wedding party of 25 people. It was crazy. It was fun. It was absolutely gorgeous. I had this perfect life. I had this perfect marriage. I would post about the trips we're taking together as families, blah, 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 blah. People followed along. People supported RiffRaff. People connected the two. They saw inside the workings of the company. Well, when I was 28, only 15 months after I got married, I had to go through the heartbreak of a divorce. And it was such a pivotal point in my life, not only because it was the end of a marriage, and I had to figure out where I was going after this, but also I had this audience, and that's so strange. And so I had put myself out there so much that I felt like I owed it to my audience to kind of explain the situation. So, and that's such a weird thing to think about. So I had to kind of sit for a couple months and think, how am I going to do this? What do I owe anyone anything? I don't even know what my thoughts are. Like, where am I going to go? What do I want to do? So I sat and I mulled over it and I thought about it, and things started to hum in the background. And it was a strange hum, but it was almost like an unraveling. And it was as if I felt my 20s kind of floating around me. And it's strange to start a business in your 20s. I don't think you're old enough to know everything at that point. And so a lot of RiffRaff has been trial and error, and it's been public. I have a very close-knit tribe, and I've thought about them a lot over the past 2 years. My tribe consists of people from different friend groups, and they're people that I connect with for different reasons. I've got a friend who I do family stuff with, and she's my family person, and I've got a creative person. She's my creative tribe member, and we talk about that. I have a member of my tribe called Meg. Her name's Meg. She is a nonprofit owner, and she's incredible with words. She's one of those people where you have this hum, and you go to Meg, and you say, this hum, this is what it is, like this is what it feels like, blah, 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 and she's like, blah, here's what it is, here's what your hum is. And she was going through a very similar situation with me as she was also going through a divorce, and at a young age, and public, because she owned a nonprofit, and she was her own personal brand, too. And one day, she posted on Instagram this picture of a heart, a human heart, and it said, the heart is the size of your fist because you need it to fight. And I was like, what? It resonated with me. And I clicked on her post, and she said, I've written about this. Come join me on my new blog. So I clicked over, and it's this amazing essay about my hum. And immediately it was my hum put into words. And the most powerful part of the whole message was the Me Too. And it's what I've learned through my own personal branding, but in a backwards way. And once I put out there that I'm no longer with my husband, what's going on there? People started to come out of the woodworks and say, hey, me too. That grief you're feeling, me too. That loss of creation, me too. That creativity you're reaching for, me too. That embarrassment, me too. And there's celebration in the me too. There's a community in the me too. It's that airing of the aches and the ashes that is the me too. And I felt myself unraveling and exposing myself and being transparent. And with that, this whole community that I had at that time became family members. And, you know, I connected with people. I knew the people that I was connecting to on a much deeper level. And what I'm trying to express necessarily is there's power in facing that fear of exposing yourself and exposing your heart and being authentic, fearlessly authentic to yourself. And since doing that, RiffRaff, who has to compete with Amazon and J. Crew and all these national brands which we can't compete with and we never will be able to compete with, now has a very human factor to it. And it's one that people connect with in a community and in the Me Too's. And all of the struggles that I've had to go through publicly was never wasted, because now I have this huge community of friends where we all connect on the Me Too's. And so that's the power of the personal brand. And what I've learned is the power of transparency and authenticity. So that's my story.